We've got chaos unfolding in Kentucky, Larry, but it's a pleasure to have you back. It's been too long. Welcome back to the show, Larry Klayman. How you doing?
Great, Jason. Great to hear from you. Of course, we've stayed in contact in the interim. Both of us have been very busy
Yeah.
fighting cockroaches all over the country and the world.
No shortage of those. And Larry, today it's the topic we're going to start with, of course, is this Supreme Court. I mean, it's an amazing dust-up over the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and President Trump's desire to carry out his constitutional duty as the President of the United States and appoint a new justice.
One of the things that I want to start with is the fact that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was no goddess. She was no icon. This is a woman who sat on Supreme Court cases with corporations that were parties that her husband owned shares of stock in and refused to recuse herself. Unbelievable. Wow. This is a woman, contrary to the Code of Judicial Conduct for federal judges. Of course, our limited Chief Justice, John Roberts, says it really doesn't apply to the Supreme Court. Unbelievable. Disparaged President Trump. Now, regardless of how you feel about President Trump, it's a violation of the judicial canons to engage in political speech, particularly with regard to a president. So she was no icon, okay? I think she was actually rather sleazy, to be honest. And of course, in terms of her decisions, they're completely contrary to what I believe in and what most conservatives and libertarians believe in. So I didn't like her ideology either.
Well, it's interesting because, she was quite old. I mean, 87, certainly some people can be very vibrant, but to be working every day and to be under pressure at that age, it's a lot for most people. The Democrats, just before we went on air, have announced a bill to put 18-year term limits on Supreme Court justices. And Larry, as much as I am loath to say this, I kind of agree with that. I don't like these lifetime appointments.
Well, you know what? This is in my new book. It takes a revolution, forget the scandal industry. Let me tell you what Thomas Jefferson said, and the book is dedicated to him. Jefferson said that federal judges, judges in general, are no more honest than other men. And that federal judges, and of course Supreme Court justices are federal judges in effect, that they someday, because they were unelected and not accountable to the people, become despots. And their rulings would cause a new revolution. In fact, Jefferson said that we would again have to shed the blood of patriots. Now, I'm not in favor of shedding the blood of anybody. My book deals with a peaceful and legal second American revolution, at this point a counter-revolution, because the ultra-left is trying to take the country over through whatever means they can, mostly illegal, mostly violence. But here's what's really interesting, to get to your point, is that in going back and reading the Constitution again, it's good to read it periodically, there is nothing in the Constitution that gives federal judges or Supreme Court justices life tenure. It simply says they shall serve for good behavior. So Congress can come along and enact a clarification of that and say, well, and I think, by the way, the 18 years is too long, much too long. I would give them 5 years, renewable for good behavior. Keep them accountable to the people. And that's one of the suggestions that I make in my book, among many other suggestions, including our use of citizens' grand juries. And you have to buy it to see all that I put in there. But the thesis of this book is that all three branches of government, the executive branch, controlled by the deep state, more powerful than the President of the United States, and I go through historically all the crimes that the deep state has committed against the American people, not all, but most of them. Book cannot be 1,000 pages long. Then I get into the legislative branch of government, who are basically court jesters and clowns, and stuffing money into their pockets, not serving the interests of the American people. And then, of course, the judiciary. And the subtitle of that chapter is First to the Guillotines, figuratively speaking. Because judges are there to protect us. They are there to protect us from the tyranny of the other two branches of government and ourselves, as I've said many times. But how do federal judges and Supreme Court justices get appointed? Generally through political campaign contributions and other largesse by special interest groups. Don't think for an instant that Amy Barrett Cohen just comes out of the blue. The president finds out about her and thinks about appointing her. I think actually, for political reasons, he should probably appoint Judge Laboa from Miami. It would be a more politically brilliant appointment. Let the Democrats try to take apart a Latina woman from Florida. It'll cost them the election in November if they do something like that. But if indeed anyone is chosen, and of course they will be, and the Republicans say they're going to have a vote, I'm not so sure they want to win that vote, but we can talk about that later. The fact is that these judges are very political animals, and they feather the nest of those who got them their jobs. They're not accountable to the American people. And my book goes through a number of examples. I have a federal judicial hall of shame, where I point out my personal experiences and other people's experiences with federal judges in particular. Wow. And that's what's dangerous. Unelected, unaccountable to no one, and lifetime tenure has become the norm. It's not even true that they have lifetime tenure. And then the Supreme Court granted themselves immunity and the lower court judges. They did it themselves, so they're not held accountable for their actions. Their actions can destroy lives and do destroy lives, yet they cannot be sued. And they can be sued for injunctive relief in a Bivens case if they violate constitutional rights. But what other judge is going to enforce that? Because there is a code of honor, or should I say dishonor, among judges, that we protect each other, we circle the wagons. I can't tell you how many times in my 44-year career I have complained about judges to judicial councils, and they just simply throw the complaints in the trash because these judicial councils sit on the same courts as the judges who committed ethical infractions.
Yeah. I mean, I think you and I are in agreement, Larry, that everybody wants to defund the police, but that's not really where the problem is coming from. It's the federal judiciary. We really need a reformation of many aspects of our legal system. I think there should be stronger protections for pro se litigants. There are certain jurisdictions where they're just totally against pro se, and I understand the reasons for that, but all this changing of the rules, they want to add more justices. What can you say about that from a historical and legal standpoint?
Well, backing up a little bit, one of the things that needs to be changed is standing. Okay, American citizens need to have the ability to challenge unjust and corrupt actions. Judges use standing, is there a case or controversy with regard to that particular citizen, as an excuse to throw cases out. They also misuse and miscite a case called Twombly versus Bell Atlantic, where judges get to decide what's plausible or not. That's not, of course, what the case says, but that's what they do. Therefore, not allowing the case to go to discovery or trial if they don't like it, particularly with my clients who have been destroyed by the leftist media. They become radioactive. They want them out of their courtroom because if they rule in their favor, then perhaps they'll be denied a higher appointment later on to an appellate court or the Supreme Court or some other appointment by the political parties. But you're right, there needs to be more rights of the American citizens to go to court, and we need better judges. I used to say that, and I still say, that we have a Cadillac of a legal system, but we have drunken drivers at the wheel. And that's what we've got. And it doesn't matter how good you are as a lawyer. If you get in front of a judge that doesn't like your case, forget it. And if you get in front of a judge that does, maybe it goes forward. But in terms of packing the court, is what the Democrats threaten to do if they get control of the Senate. They can certainly do that. But here's my basic philosophy, Jason. The Supreme Court is not the answer to the United States' problems. It's much more endemic than that. And I can tell you, I have judges, for instance, Judge Roy Moore will tell you, and he's a great man and he's a good man, despite the fact that they've tried to destroy him. He ran for the Senate in Alabama. They branded him as a pedophile, which is totally false. But, if the Supreme Court makes a decision that is contrary to the Constitution, contrary to the rule of law, it's my own belief that the American citizenry has no duty to adhere to it, because there is the law of God and there's natural law. And who are they to say, when they've been put in office for political reasons and they pay back their benefactors, who are they to say what the Constitution provides when frankly they're so compromised and largely corrupt. And I'm talking about both sides. I'm talking about the so-called conservatives on the court and also the leftist justices. Not all of them, but I would say the majority of them are so highly politicized that the American people have no confidence of anything coming out of the court, no matter which side rules. And that's my opinion, is that we need to completely revamp the entire legal system. We need to choose judges not on the basis of political patronage and campaign contributions. One judge from Rhode Island who, was criticizing the Federalist Society, which actually deserves criticism because they're the ones that gave recommendations for federal judges to Trump. It's a lobbying group primarily. It's Republican establishment. And it's no wonder, as I detail in my book, with the judges that I've come upon right up to this point, 8 Trump judges I've had cases with. They lack courage. Some of them aren't terribly bright. They're not willing to stick their neck out. And frankly, they're little better than the Obama and Clinton judges. And the title of that chapter is "The More Things Change, the More They Remain the Same," as the French say. And that's the problem, is that people have lost respect for the federal judiciary. There are some exceptions, although I can't think of any at this time, who do things on the basis of principle rather than political calculation in a case that involves a political element. Now, maybe if you're a private citizen and you're equal to your opponent, you might get a fair decision. But the kinds of cases that I bring, there's a political element to it, obviously. So you can almost gauge with 100% certainty how that judge is going to rule based upon which president, Democrat or Republican, appointed them. And that is a bastardization of our legal system. And frankly, it's why our legal system is corrupt to the core. It is. I'm a lawyer saying that of 44 years. It's corrupt to the core.
I really feel, Larry, that we would benefit. A lot of people are talking about defunding the police, changing the way policing works. You and I are talking about changes to the way the federal judiciary works. I think that each of these things should have some sort of body of citizens that has some ability, almost like a grand jury. If a judge does something egregious, I agree, 5-year term limit, the judges should be aware that their activities, their records will be scrutinized by the public. And if they behave, look at Emmett Sullivan. I know you and he have a long history, but I think a lot of people feel like he's doing things in the Flynn case that go beyond the realm of what a judge is supposed to do. What do you think about the latest developments there?
Well, I think that Judge Sullivan over time maybe developed a loose screw or two, honestly. He's behaving in a very erratic fashion, I agree. But I would have to say that of all the Democrat judges on that court, historically with me, he was the fairest. He's the one who held Cheney's Energy Task Force to the fire when we wanted to reveal, when I was at Judicial Watch, what was going on behind closed doors. They were actually dividing up the oil fields in Iraq, planning for an eventual takeover. That's important. And this is the kind of thing that you need strong judges to do. So again, Sullivan is a Democrat, so he had no problem ruling against Cheney. That case went to the Supreme Court. After I left Judicial Watch, it was argued not by me, but by somebody else. They didn't do a terribly good job, but I don't think it would have changed the result anyway, because they protect their own. These judges protect their own. You're all part of this club in Washington, this establishment. Doesn't matter whether you're Democrat or Republican or independent. You're making money hand over fist. You're acquiring power. You're part of this inner circle. You think you're smarter than everybody else, and you think you're better than everybody else. And I can remember in my first book, autobiography, my second book actually, Horrors, recounting how when I went to a White House Correspondents' Dinner, the last year that Clinton was in office, all the people that I had sued, nearly all of them, including Terry McAuliffe, put their arms around me. They, Larry, they tried to be my friend. I said, get away from me. Get away from me. I'm never going to be part of your club. They were trying to co-opt me like the devil, take me in.
But see, that's interesting,
and that's the way
Larry.
things are in Washington.
Right, and I want to ask you about that, because just within the context of what we're talking about right now, first of all, people can purchase the book Whores, tells everybody about why and how you came to fight the establishment. And that's really what we're talking about right now. This is interesting. The correspondence dinner where everybody was trying to be nice to you after you sued them. Larry, what I see, and correct me if you think this is wrong, when someone is extremely effective, I'm looking at people like Chris Ruddy, Emmett Sullivan, when they're really effective, there seems to be an effort to reach out to that person and kind of turn them to the dark side of the force. Because if they're effective, you want them on your side. And if they're working against you, it's like a double whammy if you can get them.
Well, this is the game, okay? I mean, you mentioned Chris Ruddy, okay? We have a lawsuit for Dr. Jerome Corsi because we allege that Ruddy, to do a favor to Roger Stone at the time, because Ruddy wants to be tight with Trump. You know, he's down there in Palm Beach. He's a member of Mar-a-Lago. Ruddy, by the way, had given $1 million to the Clinton Foundation. He plays both sides. Set me up to defame Dr. Corsi. We have lawsuits in that regard and other lawsuits as well. Ruddy is two-faced. Newsmax is not conservative. When I wrote for Newsmax, they edited what I wrote. I couldn't get 2/3 of my columns published because they were playing both sides of the fence. Newsmax, in my opinion, is a complete sham, okay? And there really is no competition for Fox, which has its own problems, as you know. But this is the nature of this game, and that's why my book is entitled, Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. Get up off the couch, turn off Fox News. For the few people that watch Newsmax, there aren't that many, turn that off too. First of all, the picture, you can't even discern the picture. That's how bad it is when it goes on the screen. But forget about that. Join Freedom Watch's Justice League at freedomwatchusa.org. Join the new group I formed with Sheriff Joe Arpaio. We're going to have him on shortly, Jason. americasheriff.org to protect the police and to keep them capable of defending us against extreme attack.
Yeah.
And do something. And if you don't want to join Larry Klayman in these groups and Sheriff Arpaio, do something else, but join a group that does other than getting documents. Okay, join a group that's actually bringing lawsuits. Of course, I can't think of any right now that, are hard hitting, but I would hope that you would join us. We have class actions against the communist Chinese. We have antitrust suits against social media. We have cases for our brave clients like Laura Loomer, like Sheriff Joe Arpaio, like Justice Roy Moore, like Demetric Penny, and others, a brave African-American policeman from Dallas. We're trying to change the world a little bit, but that's why judges are the focus of my book, because you see, without good judges, we're going to have to resort to other means, and I say peaceful and legal means, like citizens' grand juries, to bring about justice. And if I may make a transition, look at what we now found out about Biden.
Yeah.
Okay, Biden, Senate report, not to say that everything comes out of the Senate is true, but if there's any truth to it at all, was laundering money with his son Hunter, millions of dollars from Burisma from the Ukrainians. The son allegedly was involved in a sex trafficking ring, traveling on Air Force One, obviously to gain favor with people that would line his pockets. And I'm sure they probably kicked money back to Joe Biden too. Otherwise, they wouldn't be father and son. And yet, our Attorney General, our so-called Attorney General, Bill Barr, who I call Blowhard Bill, or Puxatani Bill, because he puts his head, he crawls back into his hole, like the groundhog every February 2nd in Pennsylvania. What is he doing? He says Biden's off limits. Obama's off limits. Hasn't indicted Comey. Hasn't indicted McCabe. Hasn't indicted the Lovebirds. Hasn't indicted Bruce Orr. Hasn't indicted the Obamas.
What is he doing, Larry?
What is he doing? He's feathering his own nest. That's why I call him Blowhard Bill, because he's trying to politically influence things, but he's not there to politically influence things. He's there to do his job, and he's not doing his job. The president, doesn't push on him because the president's been so criticized in the past. But in fact, the president is the head of the Justice Department. He's the head of the executive branch. He has the right to tell him to open investigations. And look at this clown, Durham, up there in Connecticut. What has he done? Don't expect any indictments before the election.
No.
And at this point, given the massive fraud that's likely to occur with these mail-in ballots, it's very likely that Biden and Harris will win the presidential election. Now, I had a contrary view until a few days ago, and I was disabused of that notion from a very influential person. I was thinking that it would probably be a landslide for Trump because of all this domestic terrorist violence
Right.
backlash. No, but the Democrats are mailing out millions and millions of ballots unsolicited all over the country. And if you just flip a few swing states, the election goes to Biden. So I think we got to be prepared for that. And if
Jeez.
Trump wins, you're going to see every major city in this country burn.
Right.
It'll be burned to the ground. It'll make what happened, in the early 60s, a warm-up act, after Martin Luther King was killed and others were killed.
Right.
And Martin Luther King was a great man. These people are not great men. They're hacks. And most black people are not this way. They're not in favor of that either. But there are these black vigilantes, communists, black separatists, black Muslims, the Jewish left, and I'm Jewish myself, as you know, Jewish Christian, atheists, radical feminists, radicals of all stripes are going to be in the streets. They're going to be coming for you. Many of them, they're going to come to your house. They're going to demand the keys to your home and your car. They want your property, and they can harm you and your family. And I urge people, I say, look, I'm not for violence, but use your Second Amendment rights, arm up for self-defense, because it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
And don't start it. Just defend yourself, because you got to be prepared. Things are bad, Jason. I told you to get out of New York City, because that place is going to explode.
What you're saying makes a lot of sense, but I'm still hoping that it might be incorrect. Just for a brief moment, Larry, I want to let everybody know they can watch our video right now. It's being simulcast on the Freedom Watch YouTube channel. And we've got 52 people watching us there. Something very strange happening, Larry. Although the settings are all correct, the video is not playing on Crowdsource The Truth 2. For some unknown reason, YouTube is just not playing it. So there's a lot of strange things going on.
Well, we know what happens with YouTube. They've been discriminating. And here's another example. The Attorney General, Blowhard Bill, has promised an antitrust case by the end of September. Well, we're now nearing the end of September. Don't count on that one either. He had a revolt inside the Department of Justice, the deep state, the leftists in the antitrust division, and they're fighting with him now about that. But, when it comes to law and order, and let's shift another point, I'm just letting it all out. It's all out on the table. I've been critical of President Trump. I love the guy. I'm going to vote for him. I say that personally, not as the head of Freedom Watch or americasheriff.org. But the fact is, he's mostly talk and no action. And people should not be fooled. Coronavirus. Call the Chinese all these names. Say you have the greatest military on earth, which was basically a threat the other day at the United Nations. But what are you doing to redress the economic damage that was caused to this country? What are you doing to redress the damage to health? Why isn't your Attorney General instructed to intervene in our class action in Dallas, Texas, on behalf of the American people to obtain compensation for the damage that China has caused? This is the greatest criminal act in the history of the world, short of the Holocaust, frankly. And why is it that the president just simply calls China names? Why is it that he's sitting back and watching these cities burn, watching these riots? I had Alan Keyes on my radio show. I forget the name of the act, but there's an act that's still in the books for insurrection, that when state and local officials fail to protect the interests of the United States, that the president can step in and nationalize police forces and other means to bring about law and order. The president can take control of our police officers and protect them. But instead, he's playing a political game because he thinks it's going to get him reelected. And it may, but that's not right. He's the president. He has to protect us. People are dying. 2 police were shot yesterday in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
1-year-old children have been killed, black and white. And the president's sitting there saying, I can't do anything? That's not a president. Sorry, it's not a president. So the president needs to snap out of it. He needs to man up. If he wants to win this election, he has to take control. Ronald Reagan would not have tolerated this crap for 24 hours. As far as I'm concerned, he was our last real president. to be honest. But I think this president can be a great president. He's done some really good things in the Middle East and elsewhere. But these are two major issues here, and it's not enough to play politics.
Now, Larry, let me ask you this, because you're talking about some of the unrest and everything. It seems that the sheriff's deputies who were ambushed and shot there in Los Angeles have made it out of the hospital, which is very good news. But I haven't heard anything about whether or not this suspect has been apprehended. The guy just walked up to a police car and opened fire. Any news on that?
Well, that's another thing. I'm a civil rights lawyer. I have many African American friends I have deep respect for. I think Alan Keyes, for instance, who wrote the foreword to my book, should have been president of the United States. He's got the intellect of a founding father. Okay, Alan is brilliant, others as well. But why is it that the media, if an African American shoots somebody, they never mention his race, but if it's white, the guy's white, they get smeared all over the papers and the media and everything else. We need equality in this country across the board, not just for African Americans, but for all people, races, colors, and creeds. And you got to wonder. And you got to wonder, Barr keeps saying, not more than wonder, but you see things are completely out of sync. Barr keeps saying somebody's financing, these rioters.
Right.
We got the FBI. We've got other intelligence agencies. You're telling me you don't know? I mean, where are you? And why aren't these people being rounded up? Why aren't the George Soroses and others being arrested for sedition against this country?
Freeze the assets.
Right. You cannot be afraid in today's world. And that's the message in my book. It takes a revolution, forget the scandal industry. And look at Hannity. I've been very tough on Hannity and Fox News. And, I read his book. I read it in probably 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's over 200 pages because 90% of it is regurgitating his nightly monologue, ending with, and the Democrats want to throw Granny over the cliff, right? His answer to this country is, he has the same monologue every night because he memorized it. But his answer is, vote for Donald Trump. That'll solve everything. You know what? I hope the president wins because he's done some good things. I've been critical because I want him to do what he needs to do now. But that's not a be-all and end-all. That's not a panacea. Even if he wins, it's only 4 years. The Democrats the demographics are changing. The radical left is going to have the majority in this country. And all hell's going to break loose even if Trump wins. And he won't be able to do anything anyway because the Republicans will probably lose control of the Senate. They already lost control of the House. They've got a leader in the House who's a panty waste, McCarthy.
Let me ask you this real quick, because I was quite surprised during the Democratic National Committee that they had AOC nominate Bernie Sanders. Why would she do that? Go against the party and they allow her to do that? It just did not seem like a message of unity at all.
Well, because there is no honor among thieves, Jason. And, that's the thing about these radical leftists and leftists in general, is that should they ever take power, they will then turn on each other like the Red Russians and the White Russians did, like the Ayatollahs did with the Mujahideen in Iran. They'll be killing each other in the streets to see who takes total control. Joe Biden, the brain-dead criminal that he is simply a Manchurian candidate. That's all he is. He's a placebo to get them to have a hold on power. And when that happens, look out. We're going to be in for a rough ride. You, me, and everybody else who's been critical.
Yeah, I've seen a few interviews with Joe Biden lately where, if you ask him questions, despite the Senate report coming out that shows really damning evidence that Hunter Biden was involved in all kinds of things in Ukraine and China, et cetera, Joe Biden just says, there's no evidence and I'm not going to answer that question. Come on, man. The thing. And then that's it. He doesn't address it at all. If Donald Trump had a son who had been kicked out of the Navy for smoking crack and was suspected of stealing even $50, it would be on the news every damn day.
Not only that, the guy has illegitimate kids. He denied it. He shirked his responsibility. He's a former drug addict. This is the thing, is that Joe Biden should go off and live a happy life and finish, his time off doing coloring books, which is basically what he's probably only capable of doing right now. I think he has the onset of Alzheimer's. I mean, no disrespect.
I
My
agree.
mother died of Alzheimer's. I think he's got Alzheimer's. And, but he cannot be president of the United States. I'm sorry. He cannot be president of the United States. He's not up to it. He could be declared incapacitated right now. And then who do you get? You get Kamala Harris, who's very smart, but she's also evil. She has no principles. And God knows where this country goes at that point. I mean, she even attacked Biden for being racist, and they don't want to talk about that. But, this is where the country is today, and it's why my book is important. I know I'm pushing it. I want people to read it, because you're not going to read that anywhere else. It's not Hannity's Live Free or Lie, as I call it. It's about how you take the country back in a counter-revolution, okay, and do it peacefully and legally. Because if we don't do it that way, everything's going to explode. It's urgent that people read it. In the days leading up to our revolution, on July 4th, 1776, when we declared independence, it was the printing press, as I've said many times, that coalesced the colonies. We had brilliant founding fathers and brilliant writers like Thomas Paine and others who educated the people. The people need to read. They need to digest. They need to turn Hannity off. They need to turn cable news off, MSNBC, CNBC, and the rest. Because, they're just in it for profit right now. They're trying to scare people. They still have these death charts for COVID-19. I saw statistics today. An average of 99% of the people that get COVID-19 do not die. Don't die.
Yeah.
But we're not being told that.
Right.
Instead, we've destroyed our economy, destroyed our emotional well-being, and this thing continues on today. The job statistics weren't very good. They went down, which doesn't bode well for Trump either. And this is where we are.
Yeah. And Larry, speaking of COVID-19, you and I have interviewed doctors like Judy Mikovits. Those videos have also been removed from YouTube. The new policy on all these social media platforms is that if you question, public health policy, if you question vaccine safety, you're not allowed to do that. But yet, this is how every single scientific development ever has been made. Somebody says, that doesn't sound quite right. They do a bunch of experiments. They make new discoveries. They discover new things about this vast universe that we don't know everything about. But YouTube doesn't want us to be able to do that.
No, and they push people back. Look, Judy Mikovits was going to go on Sinclair Television a while back. We gave an interview. It was in the can. Sinclair liked the interview. They had it up on their website advertising that she was going to appear on Eric Bolling's show, who had lost his job at Fox, and no disrespect to Eric, on the weekend, okay? Now, CNN then came in, and I've sued CNN for this, and Media Matters, which is, of course, funded by George Soros, and defamed Dr. Mikovits and defamed me. And Eric Bolling panicked, having lost his job at Fox. He could see losing his job probably at Sinclair, and they pulled it, okay? In the process, this reporter, his name's Darcy, I believe, I forget exactly.
Oliver Darcy, yeah.
Oliver Darcy defames me as a purveyor of false information. And, I said, please tell me what I've done that's false. And I tried to settle it with him. And he says, well, you sued Obama for Ebola, for letting people into the country. I said, yeah, what's wrong with that? That doesn't mean it was false. He shouldn't have let people into the country with Ebola. And he endangered the United States. Thank God it worked out okay. And I'll do the transition. So I wound up suing CNN. And this is what you go through. And, they don't let you exercise your First Amendment rights, whether it's social media or CNN or any place else. They destroy you. They've tried to destroy you, Jason. They've tried to destroy me. They've destroyed many of my clients. And, I don't turn the other cheek. Maybe I don't get a good judge that will allow the case go forward, but let them pay the price of having to answer in a court of law as far as it will go. And I file cases that are real, not frivolous cases.
Yeah, I mean, it almost seems like they're coming from every single angle, Larry, because, that Sinclair takedown was one of the topics we were discussing in the interview with Dr. Mikovits, and then they took that video down. So they really don't want what Dr. Mikovits is saying to get out there into the public. It's, why doesn't CNN just put on some better expert to deconstruct what Dr. Mikovits claims and counter her claims with stronger claims? They don't do that. They just want to stifle her, muzzle her, and take her down. Why is Dr. Fauci untouchable? If a doctor told you anything about your health, it's a prudent step to speak to other doctors and get multiple opinions.
Well, here's why. Because the coronavirus, COVID-19, the Democrats cleverly, look, the devil is smart, right? He's smart. They cleverly figured out that coronavirus was a means for them to take control of this country, politically and otherwise. So Dr. Fauci becomes their Mohammed, in effect, their prophet, okay? And he becomes God. And whatever Dr. Fauci says is true. So Dr. Fauci says we all have to wear masks. Well, you know what? That's counterproductive, according to Dr. Mikovits, because we're not allowing ourselves to develop immunity. The virus is only transmitted through droplets, okay? So if you don't get too close to somebody, you're not going to get it. Dr. Mikovits told me and has told the world the best way you can prevent COVID-19 is to get sleep, eat well, take vitamin C and vitamin D, and get sunlight. Okay, now Fauci belatedly said that last week. Why weren't people told that? That keeps your immunity up, okay?
Right.
And Dr. Mikovits revealed she worked with Dr. Fauci at Fort Detrick, the military lab that studies viruses. Why do we have a military lab that studies viruses? Well, in principle, it's to combat a biological or a bioweapon attack, But in fact, the United States also makes bioweapons, and so does every other country. And that's in my book as well, It Takes a Revolution. The anthrax that attacked us after 9/11 came from Fort Detrick. We had developed that anthrax.
Yeah.
That was an aggressive form of anthrax that we gave to Saddam Hussein to use against the Iranians when, we were seeking retribution against the Iranians over the Iranian hostage crisis. After many years of that, we were supporting Saddam Hussein. Brilliant by George Bush, the dad, I may add. Brilliant. Okay, he gave them the anthrax, and it got out. So she worked with him there, and in fact, she knows firsthand that the seeds of SARS, the SARS virus, which became COVID-19, were sent to the Wuhan lab to do research because Fauci wanted it sent there because the research that we were doing here would have been illegal. Like we farmed out torture, after 9/11. We no longer could do it, massive torture. And the Chinese then took that and engineered it into a bioweapon. We now have 3 experts who will say that, not just Dr. Mikovits, Francis Boyle, who helped write the bioweapons treaties. He's a professor at the University of Illinois. And this woman who's come forward in the last few weeks, Li Meng Yu, or whatever her name is.
Oh, yeah.
Who
been shut down everywhere like crazy.
Oh, they shut her down, and she has firsthand knowledge. So we have great witnesses for our Dallas case. Our case in Jerusalem, Israel, that we brought with our fine Israeli colleagues is going forward. We're likely going to get a default judgment in a few weeks.
Wow.
Of course, but this is interesting. The Israeli government is trying to intervene to protect the Chinese.
What?
So who have they paid off in the Israeli government?
Wow.
China owns a lot of assets in Israel. Okay, and this is the corruption of governments around the world, including the Israeli government, which do not represent the people, but they represent themselves. But
it's the
American
globalists,
people,
right? Within these governments,
right?
Traitors.
We need to rise up. We need to rise up, and that's what my book is about. So I hope people will pre-order it on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com, BooksAMillion.com, Orders.com. You can find it everywhere. It's not like anything that anyone else has written. I'm not regurgitating monologues. I'm not talking about the Steele dossier or this or that. That's part of the context of how corrupt we are. But we, the American people, need to stop being entertained primarily by cable news, and we need to rise up ourselves and fight a new revolution, as Jefferson said we would have to.
Well, Larry, a lot of the things that you're saying ring true, but they aren't very hopeful. Is there anything? I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but what can we share with our viewers that might give them some hope?
Well, that God, God is on our side, but God helps those who help themselves, and we need to rise up. We can't be sitting here. Look at the sports leagues. Okay, look at certainly African Americans deserve equal rights. Certainly, they should not be subject to police brutality. There's not that much police brutality. It's relatively minor. There's some bad eggs in there. That's true. But we need the police. And they need to rise up and support the police, americassheriff.org and freedomwatchusa.org. I'm not in favor of heavy-handed police tactics. After all, that was used on the Bundys, okay? And I successfully defended them in the end. That indictment just affirmed by the Ninth Circuit is gone. But, you know, we need to rise up. We just can't sit there and watch. And now you have particularly white people who are responsible for what's going on. They're using these radical blacks as pawns, the communists, the socialists, and others. They are running for the exits. Whites are in a crouched position saying, don't hurt me, I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry about what my ancestors did. You can do whatever you want. Look at the NBA. What a disgrace the NBA is. I won't watch a game. A lot of people won't anymore. You know, printing Black Lives Matter on basketball courts and letting them put whatever they want on their jerseys, disparaging white people and others. You know, it's unbelievable. Look at the NFL, 2 national anthems, one for African Americans, one for everybody else. Most African Americans don't want that. Okay, that's not what they have in mind, but these radicals do. And NFL players, frankly, most of them are so stupid they don't even know what the story is. My former brother-in-law is Oliver Luck, Andrew Luck's dad. I once asked him, he was a quarterback for the Houston Oilers under Warren Moon. I said, how many people on the team could you actually relate to, Oliver? And he said, maybe 3. He said the rest were so stupid I couldn't even talk to them.
Wow.
So, and look at Major League Baseball, same thing, and even golf. You know, and I love the game of golf. It's the last sport that has any decorum and sense of class. But just about a week ago, an NBA player sent out a tweet saying, Trump is responsible for my family getting COVID-19. And a golfer by the name of Kevin Kisner from Georgia, very good golfer, in the top 30 golfers, you know, in terms of ability, sent out another tweet that said, well, why didn't you just follow the guidelines? The PGA dressed him down, told him he better apologize.
Wow.
And humiliated him. Okay. And, you know, and this is the story. So what I'm saying is that the silent majority is silent. They're going along with this stuff. And at the same time, these radicals are tearing the country apart. And then you have an attorney general and a president who are doing little to nothing about it. You know, if people were locked up in mass, Barr says he locked up 1,200 people. You know, there's tens of thousands of people in the streets, not 1,200.
Right.
Some of them were in to the suburbs of Beverly Hills about a month ago with T-shirts saying "Eat the rich," meaning kill the rich. Okay, they're communists, obviously. Now, the Beverly Hills police actually took some action, one of the few, and cleared them out and arrested some people. But by and large, if Barr arrested as many people as he claims he did, you'd hear about that from the left. You don't hear them saying much of anything about.
Well, they have these things. They're raising money to bail people out. I mean, even Kamala Harris was urging people to donate to something to pay the bail for people who are fighting with the police, burning down our cities, chasing people out, eroding the tax base, destroying the economy. How the hell can Kamala Harris do that and not herself get in trouble?
You know, we know what the story is, Jason. We have no government. We have no government. It's not government fine for the people. It's not government for we the people. It's government for themselves. And that's what it's about. And that is what left and right have in common. Left and right have no trust in government. They don't believe a word the government says. But of course, we have different ideologies and different objectives and different missions. And one side's going to win and one side's going to lose. And let's make sure that the conservatives, libertarians, people of faith, that we win and they lose. And that's what my book's about.
Yeah. Well, people can get the book, as you said, Larry, at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. I've been taking to recommending Barnes & Noble lately because I think people should buy from a retailer that's not controlled by the CIA. The book is going to be out on October 27th, and people can pre-order it now. Of course, people who go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate, what's the number, Larry, where people get the whole library of books?
You'll get it for free if you donate at least $50. We'll send it to you for free. Yeah. And so people, we're marketing it in other ways, but I'm not going to I probably won't make anything on the book. To me, this was inside of me so long, Jason. I had to put it down. I write these weekly columns for WorldNet Daily. I used to write them for Newsmax, but they censored them, so I gave that up. But it was inside of me. I had to put it all together, and at least, if I get aced by a radical leftist tomorrow, at least it'll be in print. My kids can read it someday, or people can read it. But I had to do it, and it was cathartic. And if I have to thank COVID-19, it gave me the time to write it. I wrote it in a month and a half.
I don't know where you find the time. You're like the busiest guy I know.
Well, I get up at 3 or 4 a.m. every day when it's quiet.
Whoa.
And, the phone's not ringing and whatever. I turn the news on for 10 minutes. I turn it off. I do a podcast each day on Radio America, and you can find it at freedomwatchusa.org. But it was inside of me, and it is really strong. And WND sent out the introduction today. You can find it on their website, wnd.com. They're helping me sell the book, pre-order it, and it's very strong. And I'm candid there. I'm not, like Tom Fitton at Judicial Watch saying, "Oh, another judicial election victory, aren't I great?" What I'm saying is Larry Klayman has not accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. I haven't. I barely scratched the surface. I've had victories. I've had major victories. But if you look at the situation today, in the words of Hillary Clinton, what difference did it make? Frankly, okay? It's time for humility. It's time to admit that with the way the legal system is, it's a stacked deck. And therefore, we need to do something else. The citizens' grand juries, we're going to be, and Jason, you can film it again if you're free and you'd like to, we're going to indict Biden and Hunter Biden for these crimes. We're going to try Mueller when the COVID-19 subsides a little more, sometime in late fall. We're going to do all of these things. And of course, in the book, I explain that the concept of citizen's arrest comes from ancient England. We have a right to indict, try, and convict, and arrest. We will try to do it peacefully and legally. We won't resort to violence. Now, when you do a citizen's arrest, you have to turn that person over to the authorities, to the legal authorities. Our legal authorities are not willing to do anything these days.
No, that's right.
So what's the alternative? And that's what scares me, is because everything points to a violent revolution. Everything points there. The left is probably going to ignite it in and around the time of the elections. I don't want to see that happen. But frankly, I think a bloodbath is on the horizon, and I'm trying to prevent that.
Yeah, I mean, they've been doing everything they can to ignite that. They're literally out in the streets, shutting things down. That headline right there on WND was talking about they're hurling Molotov cocktails at the police. I mean, I don't understand how anyone can see this as anything other than behavior worthy of arresting everybody there. Let me switch gears for a second, Larry, just back to what we were talking about with Durham. It seems like there's some sort of like internal battle going on. Is it possible that Durham wants to move forward and Barr is preventing him from doing that? This Dennehy, I forget her first name, but this woman resigned from the Durham team. It just sort of seems like maybe there's some unrest going on.
Well, there is, and she's obviously a leftist, and she's trying to prevent it going forward, but that may be a convenient excuse for doing nothing. Let me give you my theory, too, about the Supreme Court. I'm not so sure that either Amy Coney Barrett or Judge Laboa from Miami. By the way, I would choose Laboa. I think that would be a brilliant choice. She's very good. She's a Cuban-American. She's a Latina. Let the Democrats rip her apart as a Latina woman from Florida, okay? I would do that. Now, the point being is not that it matters much who's on the Supreme Court, as I said earlier, because they're all politically motivated. But I have a feeling that the Republicans are just going through the motions right now, and that they may actually hope that no one gets confirmed because the Democrats ultimately block it, and they can use that as an election issue with regard to defeating Biden. Because if they do confirm a judge with all the negativity on the cable networks, the president's supporters are his supporters. He's got a very strong base, including me. But it will influence a lot of independents. I don't think it's going to cause the independents to vote for Trump. I think it only works against him because of all the negative publicity coming out of MSNBC and CNN and the others. And therefore, I think that McConnell, and I may be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, may not worry about whether he does not confirm a justice or not in time for the election, because politically it probably would cost the Republicans.
Well, they're talking about impeaching Donald Trump again for attempting to appoint a Supreme Court justice, something that is the constitutional duty of the president. They like to talk about how, this or that hasn't been done before. That's more a convention, but we've got laws, we've got a constitution. How can they possibly hope to impeach a president over doing something lawful?
We have laws and we have a constitution, but they're not adhered to. So as far as I'm concerned, we have no law and we have no constitution. Look, what was the expression of the Bolsheviks, of Karl Marx, of the communists?
I don't know.
The ends justify the means, right? That is the Communist Manifesto. That's what Marx wrote. Okay? They don't care about law. They'll do whatever they have to assume power. And that's where we are right now. And that's why in the end, it's them versus us, and we must win, and we must defeat them.
Yeah.
Or our lives are literally in danger. Just like, watch Dr. Zhivago. See what happened there.
No, we're in a treacherous time for sure, Larry, and that's why it's more important than ever for Crowdsource the Truth viewers to visit freedomwatchusa.org. People can make a financial contribution. Freedom Watch is a 501c3 tax-exempt corporation, so your donations to Freedom Watch are tax deductible. You can also get the links to Larry's podcast, and you can learn all about the class action lawsuits that people can join. You can learn about the citizens' grand juries. And don't forget to pre-order Larry's book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. You can get that at Barnes & Noble or wherever books are sold. Larry, anything you'd like to say in closing before we wrap it up tonight?
It basically, what I've been saying all along is that we are in more than a crisis. It's like we're sitting on the Titanic listening to the music as the ship of state sinks and no longer exists. And, conservatives have always been purveyors of doom, right? But you know what? It's proven to be true. And we are at that point right now. And I say to the president, Mr. President, we love you. We want to see you reelected. And again, I say that personally. But I'll tell you something, you got to be president. Just don't play political games. And right now, you got to assume control. Because if you don't, we're looking at a violent revolution in front of us.
I hope we can avert that, Larry. And we will be back in touch. We're going to have Sheriff Arpaio with us in just a couple days, so I think people are looking forward to that. And I want to thank you for joining me tonight. It's an important message for us all to really take to heart. This Breonna Taylor judgment, we didn't get a chance to really talk about that. It's amazing that even when we have a black attorney general of Kentucky who went through what I thought was a very thoughtful and well-articulated presentation about the facts of the case, so contradictory to what we have heard. This woman was not asleep in bed. Her boyfriend fired the first shot at the police, and in returning fire, the woman was unfortunately killed. Now, it's still a tragedy, but the police can't just not shoot back at people shooting them.
Yeah, they have a right of self-defense. And let's pray for that attorney general, because he's in fear of, only God knows. And I'll tell you something, Demetric Penny, my brave client in Dallas, Texas, when he brought a lawsuit, he was a Dallas cop. He still is. He's running for Congress. when he brought a case against Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, Black Lives Matter, and the Black Panthers Party in Sharpton. His life was threatened. He was all kinds of names, and Uncle Tom, the House N. He had to move, and he is one brave guy. Okay, and I fear for the Attorney General in Kentucky. He should take precautions because, he's going to be killed if he's not careful.
Wow. And Larry, the mantra that we hear from the Black Lives Matter protesters is no justice, no peace. But in actual fact, they don't want justice. They want revenge. And their version of justice has nothing to do with the law or actual justice. It's they decide what needs to happen. And if that doesn't happen, they're going to destroy everything.
I mean, let's be blunt. No one else will say this, Jason. They hate white people. That's the bottom line. Things have flipped. They've become the version of the Ku Klux Klan. They're the flip side of the Ku Klux Klan. That's who they are.
Powerful words, Larry. And with that, we're going to wish everybody a good night. I'm actually going to be back on air in just 30 minutes. I'm going to be joined by Shepard Ambellis, who is on the ground in Kentucky. We had planned a live shoot, but they've just announced a curfew, so everybody is locked inside. We're going to check in with Shepard and Larry. We'll see you soon. Everybody's going to visit freedomwatchusa.org. And I want to remind people they can support Crowdsource the Truth by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. Vimeo is the latest social media platform to try to destroy Crowdsource the Truth. There's a little bit of a disruption going on right now, but we've got a fix underway, and I hope that people who are sponsors right now will stay with us through this disruption. All the videos in the library will be back soon. Larry, I'll speak to you very soon. Thanks for another great
God bless, Jason.
Appearance.
Thank you for what you do. Without people like you, we have no hope. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Larry, and thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you soon.